There was a question about efficiencies and how they could be looked up. Yesterday, we saw a presentation by Irini. No one further?
อันนี้เป็นคำถามส่วนหนึ่งมาจากทางบ้าน
by Irini Nicolau, and she showed you benchmarks. I think that's the best way to look at efficiencies. And if you in a browser, we cannot see this yet on the screen.
Now, okay.
Okay. You see, I just typed EU ETS benchmark update PDF. That's how I found it. Here is a PDF. We can also share the link if that's relevant for you. And this is a document that has all benchmarks for all sectors. Okay, there's a menu where I want to click. So here.
EU ETS benchmark PDF, right?
Yeah. And here we would see a table in the beginning with all the benchmarks. It's 52 product benchmarks with the free allocation they get in total in 2021 and the emissions that were covered in the base period 2016 to 2017. If you look at the numbers, then there are a couple of benchmarks that stand out, particularly hot metal, which is 110 million, page 11. I'll go to page 11 to see the hot metal benchmark. But you have this information for all benchmarks. So this is the curve of the emissions intensity, the blue one, per installation. You see it's 25 installations in total that are under these benchmarks, so probably 25 blast furnaces and their emission intensities. And then it kicks up here. The last two, they really stand out. The rest is on this curve. And then you could see the average emissions for the 10% most efficient installations. That's this value. And you see the benchmark value. This is the free allocation they get per ton produced, and a lot of other very useful data if you want to calculate with that. I won't go through that in detail because we have a lot of stuff on markets, but you see also here we have a high degree of transparency and if we want to calculate with something like that, we have a lot of numbers available.
So I always thought that the free allocation will be exactly at the average of the 10%. So it's not, it's just some linkage because the numbers are not exactly the same.
Yeah, because they were updated. So the average 2016 and 17 is the basis to update this benchmark. You can see in the line below that the benchmark value for 2013 to 20 was 1.328 tons of CO2 per tons of product. And then it was updated to 1.288. And that translates into the free allocation you get for this product. And that's the average of the 10% most efficient installations. All other installations need to buy the certificates for the excess amount of emissions they have. And that is the actual cost incurred on them. And that makes it, even with free allocation, attractive to reduce your emission intensity per ton of product. Because this is being below this value or above this value actually means that you have a competitive disadvantage compared to the benchmark installations.
Okay, I'm gonna go back a little bit to the more foundation. So in the EU ETS การแจก allocation เนี่ยมันจะมีส่วนที่ ที่มีการแจกนะบางอุตสาหกรรมจะได้แจกแต่บางอุตสาหกรรมจะไม่ได้แจกนะฮะแต่ในส่วนที่แจกเนี่ยในส่วนที่ไม่ได้แจกก็แน่นอนก็ต้องไปออกชั่นไปซื้อนะฮะส่วนที่ไม่ได้แจกก็คือเขาจะใช้เบนช์มาร์กจากค่าเฉลี่ยของโรงงานที่ดีที่สุด 10% แรกนะครับเอาค่าเฉลี่ยนั้นมาเป็นฐาน The question I was asking is that the number are not the same. Yeah, so is it like the intention want it to be the same or it just that there's discrepancy because it's 1331 and 1288?
That is because of the years that are attached. So this the 1.331 is 2016 to 17.
Oh, I see.
And you update it for 21 to 25.
Okay.
There is an improvement in the meantime.
Okay, that's true.
Yeah, that's the reason.
So the factory would try to reduce the emission, so the intensity will be better over time, right? Okay. Yeah, I didn't see the time. Thank you, Andreas. So
always nice to have good questions. I think we are going to raise a lot more questions now when we talk about markets, and I have quite a long presentation. The next part, we have 2 sessions in the afternoon, but I have 1 presentation from my side for both parts of the afternoon because it just goes through all the many elements of the carbon market, and that's why the presentation is also called Emissions Trading in Action. And yeah, let's dive right into it. Colm will remind me of the time at points, but always feel free to ask questions. I think there might be quite some. So what we are looking at is sort of all the aspects of emissions trading, basics very short. Then we look at traded products, at the types of transaction we see in the market, at the market players, at price trends and price factors, and then market stability mechanisms and market oversight. So. Okay, yeah, there's a lot to click again. So the basics are environmental effectiveness, of course, as a pro of emissions trading, because we exactly achieve the target. Cost efficiency, I think that's the argument always for market solutions. Then the pros of the ex-ante definition of a system that brings us high predictability for companies and operators. There is an asterisk to this because you only have this high predictability of the market if the market actors don't expect political interventions. So if they can expect that the system of rules is stable. In the EU ETS, we have seen very high volatility in prices in the past months. And this volatility was almost only politically induced because it was not so clear for market actors anymore if politicians would not substantially change the system and loosen ambition. So this predictability argument comes with an asterisk. Then we of course have the highest possible flexibility for operators, and yeah, then cap and trade is also a self-adjusting system to economic conditions. In phases of an economic downturn, we have a sinking demand for allowances, and that lowers the price and lowers the pressure on companies. Also, in times of sinking demand and a weak economy, companies can put their excess allowances to the market and gain additional liquidity. This was particularly relevant for companies in the economic crisis in 2008 and 2009, where we had the combination of this economic and financial crisis. And then maybe interesting for Thailand, because it's a small country or a small carbon market that you expect to create, is linking. That's something that can help to improve the efficiency of such markets. With one participant, I was discussing this morning about the system that we saw in California that is linked to provinces in Canada. And I think a good example for that. So let's get a bit more specific. Trading in the EU market. We're talking about trading between two partners always. So when we have a trade between two partners, sorry, I'm arranging my screen here. What is? Did I press the wrong button? Okay, wasn't me. Good. So trading means that we have an agreement between two contractual partners, and this agreement will, like any deal, I think it's easy to understand, fix certain conditions. It will, first of all, say which type of allowance is traded, then a price needs to be fixed, a volume needs to be fixed, and also a delivery date and a payment date. In technical terms, this is then done through a registry. We had a look at the registry website this morning. All these trades then after a certain time can also be looked up. So high degree of transparency. But this is a certificate is nothing that you print or physically own, but it has its home in the registry, and trading means it changes its home in the registry, like when you hold stocks. And the third thing that is allowed is on the payment side, the interaction between the two banks of the two trading partners. So let's look at traded products. This is something that has become easier in the past. I see. Okay, this is not the latest version of the presentation, so but that's okay. It's only minor changes. We have one primary product, and that's EUAs. That's in the top. That's the EU allowance, and the one with an A in front is airline allowances, or for aviation. That's a bit of semi-integrated this system. And then we have the linking with Switzerland, a very small country of 8 million people, I think, in the middle of Europe, and they have a carbon market that is fully linked with the EU ETS. So there you have a possibility to trade. UK allowances, no. CERs, ERUs, that's a thing of the past, that's offsets. There are some lessons to learn from that. That's why it's still on the list. Swaps, not relevant anymore since we don't have these offsets at the moment. And then our options. I'll come to that later. So we have two dominant market segments. One is the spot market, and the other is our forward deals. Spot market is like going to a shop. You take something from the shelf, you pay it, you have it. The forward market is ordering something that will be delivered in the future. More detail later. At the moment, we stay simple. And then we have different trading venues. For trading, we, on the one hand, have exchanges, and on the other hand, we have the OTC business, so over the counter between two parties. I got something to sell and you want to buy it, so we do a deal over the counter. So let's compare these two. Spot trading means that you pay for an allowance, you get it now, and there's a very short time between payment and delivery. And that means you have a very low counterparty risk. And this is good if you need to increase your position instantly. For example, if it's the surrender date and you're late, it's the 30th of September, because on the 1st of October, that's the hard cut we have there. It's controlled if everybody has fulfilled their obligations. Second thing is forward trades. So in a forward trade, you agree on a volume and a price today, but the delivery occurs at a future date that is defined within a contract. And forward prices help you secure a certain price, and that gives you a lot of security for planning. If you make a sale now with a delivery in the future, for example, for electricity, because you are a utility and sell electricity to industrial clients, this is often years ahead, largely the next year, but in Europe, utilities sell up to 7 years ahead the electricity. So you need to hedge the price risk, and you can do that with forward deals. And the benchmark contract in the EU is always the December contract for the given year. So the December 26 contract is also the contract that we use to say what is the current EUA price. And that would mean that you have a delivery in December. These contracts are a bit more expensive than spot deals because you have the cost of carry. Cost of carry means, you have costs for holding a certificate, you have costs for the liquidity for the provider of the forward deal, and also insurance costs. So that's what is meant with the cost of carry. Let's make an example for spot trading. Okay, I updated these numbers. That's now we deal with the older numbers, but that's all fine. So this is an example for 2022. In a spot deal, for example, on 5 December, you agree on the terms of a deal, especially the volume and the price. Then on, where did this jump? Was that me? Okay, sorry. So, I don't think so. Yeah, and then 2 days later, you would have the delivery of the certificates, and then the payment comes after, depending on whether there's a weekend in between or else, yeah? So a forward deal works different. Here, when we buy a forward deal, for example, the December 24 contract in 22, then we also seal the deal on the 5th of December in 22. And besides volume and price, we also agree on the terms of the deal and especially the delivery date. Also, and then when the forward deal is due, then we have the delivery of the certificates, in this example, 2 years after, and the payment. So let's look at, okay, they're swapping the presentations. So, I'll give them a minute to change that because there's a... It doesn't matter if I can click through. PDF is better because I don't need all these in animations. Very good. Great, thanks. So, because, yeah, I added a couple of new slides. So this is an example from today, looking at ICE. So that's information of the Intercontinental Exchange. That's where the most deals happen. And what you can see, this is their forward contracts. You can have a May 26 forward contract, June, August, December, and I enlarged the detail information of December. If you look at the very right column, you see volumes, and you see that this May, June, August, this is just a couple hundred contracts that you have, a couple hundred EUAs behind it, but the December 26 contract, that's almost 21,000. So this is the relevant contract that we have. And that's why it's also our benchmark indicator for the EUA price. We also see the price developments of the past 3 months, and you can see that prices are moving somewhere between 64 and 78 euros. That's a very high fluctuation, and this volatility was, as I said, politically induced. So here I have a chart from the last decade, the third phase, just to give you a quick idea of the role of offsets, because we were also talking about offsets here in the example for Thailand. And the blue bars you see, that is the traded volumes in EUAs, EU allowances, and the green bars are offsets that were allowed in a certain phase, and then it was stopping. You see the last trades in 2016, but the large part happened in 2009 to the end of 2012, and you see that it's quite a substantial share of the trades that we saw with offsets. So if they are integrated in the market and there is a significant price differential that it's attractive to use them, then they can play quite a substantial role in the market. But I'll leave it with that on offsets. So options, maybe a bit in more detail. What is an option? An option is either an option to buy or to sell. A buy option is a call option. A sell option is called a put option. To sell what? A defined volume of a product at a defined future date. That's called the expiration date of the option at a pre-agreed price. That's the strike price of the option. So this is useful for hedging price risks. The seller has the advantage of getting a premium for providing the option. That's the actual business of usually banks that offer such a financial product. And the buyer has the freedom to exercise this option or not. It doesn't make sense to call an option when the actual EUA price is lower. Then you have the benefit of paying less than what you have hedged in terms of price with the option, but you have paid for the option because you secured the price against higher prices. Yeah, so you hedged your price risk, and that's the why an option makes sense. So options are an important element in a market for all actors that have the necessity to secure future prices. That's not only relevant for utilities, that can also be relevant for industrial companies when we're talking about forms of large-scale industrial production with future delivery dates, very long after the deal, but you need to incorporate a certain CO2 price in the deal because it's simply part of your deal. The buyer wants to know how much the product costs, and it's difficult to sell products where you have a variable price component in it. It's possible, but difficult. So options in the EU ETS in the early phase played a minor role because prices were at quite low levels. And since prices were increasing from around 2018, they became increasingly relevant. And that's what we saw, and we will see it in statistical terms also shortly. I'd go on with transaction types, but feel free to ask questions whenever. Don't wait until the end because it's a bit of a longer presentation. Yeah. So two generally different types of transactions exists. First one is primary market transactions, and the other one is secondary market. The primary market is where allowances enter the market. And this is auctions. Governments sell allowances through auctions. And auctioning since 2013 is a default method of allocation in the EU ETS. Free allocation is continued so far until 2030, it says, but at the moment we are about to prolong this system. But free allocation is decreasing due to CBAM. So for CBAM sectors, which is steel sector or aluminum sector, fertilizers, free allocation started to decrease from the 1st of January this year. And since we're talking CBAM, by the way, yesterday the question was Thailand CBAM and how international prices would be accounted for in the EU ETS. Today, the regulation actually came out, the draft regulation. So just for those who want to follow that up. Okay, back to the primary market. So free allocation is being decreased for CBAM sectors from the 1st of January this year until 2034. That is a very large share of free allocation that is decreasing through this. There are, however, other sectors that continue to receive free allocation. These can be split in two groups. I would say one group is the chemical sector, basic chemicals, where we currently don't see that this sector will be a CBAM sector due to complexity. So this will remain as free allocation, most likely. And other sectors that will probably come under CBAM soon. The paper industry is one example. So that is also decreasing free allocation, and that means we have an increasing share of auctions in the system. So this is the first type of transaction, and we'll look at the primary market in numbers shortly. The secondary market is how these allowances, depending, and that means both allowances that have been handed to operators for free allowances, and allowances that have been auctioned can change hands. Allowances that are allocated for free often won't change hands because operators hold them on their accounts until they need them. But the allowances that are auctioned then get traded. And we have two important forms of trades. I already mentioned them. So trading on exchanges means we have only standardized products there. The transactions are usually high volume, and that means we have a limited number of actors who participate in trading on exchanges. The advantage is that this provides a very high level of security because the exchange takes the counterparty risk, or specifically an entity that is run or operated by the exchange. That's a separate entity, but that's a technicality. And they offer the clearing service. So for the European Energy Exchange, where the European allowances are auctioned, we have the European Commodity Clearing as an entity that serves as a clearing house. The second way of trading in the secondary market is OTC deals, where we have specific, tailored, and negotiated contracts. These are bilateral trades between two actors, and we often have intermediaries there. We might also see brokers. Brokers don't play such a big role in the EU ETS anymore, but they were more important in the beginning. So these sort of historic lessons that are not so relevant in the EU ETS anymore are often useful when we look at emerging or new markets. Then we often see lower volumes there, and it is possible to clear an OTC deal via an exchange. That is something that a bank could do, but you need somebody who is registered as a clearing partner with an exchange. Not anybody can do that. Okay, let's look closer at the primary market. When is the break scheduled?
So we can either do it at
2:30. Okay, thanks. Yeah, nice. We're progressing quite fast. So, primary market auctions in the EU ETS. It's a very transparent allocation method because we get so much price information, and it avoids windfall profits for companies. Currently, around half of the EUAs are auctioned, I talked about the phasing out. So member states of the EU, they sell their allowances on this one common auction platform, the EEX. How is this done? So auctions are done as a single round sealed bid with a uniform price. What that means, I'll show in an example shortly. It means that entities may submit not only one bid, but you could, for example, bid for 50,000 EUAs that you would buy at a price of 65, and an additional 30,000 if the price is 70. Probably these numbers would be closer to each other, but so you can place several bids there. The result is that each successful bidder pays the same price. So everybody receives the volume they bid for at the lowest price that the auction cleared with. The bids that were received in the auction together form the demand curve. Sorry, lots of talking and I can't place the water glass here. So the bids, they add up to a demand curve. and then you clear at the lowest price. And bids are successful if they are at or above the clearing price. Can I have a micro that I can hold? That's, I think, easier. I think that's on you. Okay, thanks. So here is an example. We have an auction volume of 1 million EUAs that we auction, and we do this in a single priced sealed bid auction. And on the left column, you see the orders in a chronological order as they come in. So this is an example from the past when prices were still around 15, 16 euros. And you see bidders, A to H, the prices they bid, and the volumes. What you also see is the total volume in the bottom, so that would be 2 million. And now these orders get sorted by price. So in the middle column, we have the same information, but just sorted by price. Lowest price in the bottom, 16 euros, highest price, 16.25 in the top. And then you accumulate the volumes that the bidders bid for and go down until the volume is above this 1 million that you have to auction. What we see is that bidder C, then with bidder C we have 1.1 million demand, and that means that bidder C defines the price for all. So this auction here in the example clears at 16 euros and 18 cents, and everybody pays this 16.18. The next thing is that bidder C is then the only bidder who doesn't get the full amount that they were bidding for, but that is cut by 100,000, and so ends with 150,000. Their bid is then partially fulfilled. As a more recent example, here is German auctions in July last year, 2025. So you see there were 4 auctions in of German EUAs, but all member states do that. So in that month there were all the auctions of other member states also. You see that the auction volume was always the same, 1.6 million. The bid volume was much higher, so between 2.4 and 1.88, a factor of 2.4 or 1.88 higher. That's called the cover ratio, and the average cover ratio was 2.14. So the number of bidders, that's interesting, is in average 21. It's a quite small number if you think back of the list of operators that we saw this morning, which is very long. And the clearing price was in average 70 euros. You see there's not so much fluctuation. Quite something still between 69.68 and 17.85. That's more than €1.17. So that's not nothing, given that we're talking about 450 million in revenue. These 450 million go to the German state. So that's state income in the first place. It's almost completely used to compensate then companies against these costs again. But you also see that from a budgetary position, this is relevant. At EEX, the European Energy Exchange, there are different types of membership. You can have a full membership at EEX, you can have what's it called, emissions-only membership, or an auction-only membership, or trade indirectly via a trading member or a clearing member. The auction-only membership comes at, this was updated only in 2021, so free of technical and annual fees if the participation is handled via fax, if somebody still knows it. I tried to find out if that changed in the last 3-4 years. I didn't find out. I need to ask my trading colleagues. But it comes at fixed annual costs if a technical front end is used. Yeah. So, but it's the sort of the cheapest membership where an option to use it for free was given. And then on top come variable costs. So last slide on the primary market. Here is a look at the primary market in 2024, EU in total. That is from ESMA, the market authority, market stability authority in Europe. What you can see here is 2024 compared against 2023. 220 auctions were held. So we have these 4 auctions in 1 month by Germany, times 12, 48. So you see quite a high share in auctions, but 220 auctions in total, and 600 million EUAs were auctioned. The total revenues were 39 billion in 24. And the number of participants for this quite substantial amount of money is only 44. So that gives you an idea that in auctions, only big players are active. 30 of them non-financials. Utilities usually have a trading desk, large utilities, and also 14 financials, larger banks. And you also see the cover ratio is, like in the German auctions, quite high. So cover ratio means how much more is asked for in an auction than is available. Yeah. So there is demand, and that's driving the price. The average price in 2024 was 65, in 2023, 83. So we have a significant decline in price. What can we also read from these numbers? The number of auctions, did you notice that it grew by more than 10%? So yesterday we learned that we have a decreasing cap where we auction less every year. So how does somebody have an idea? Why could the number of allowances auctioned nevertheless increase? There are several factors. One is that in a response to the energy crisis after Russia's attack on Ukraine, the EU decided to, it's called front loading, auction allowances earlier than scheduled to raise money to support the economy and industries. And this led to, for example, was a factor that would change it's called the auction calendar or the schedule. Yeah? Another is that we have a market stability reserve in the EU that is like an automated central bank. I'm talking about it later. And this is also interfering with the auction calendar. So the decreasing cap is a nice straight line, but the actual reality of a market, the question how many allowances do actually enter a market, is a different reality. And that is also why companies need analysts and market experts, because just based on the cap, you cannot determine the price, and that is not useful for market behavior.
We've had a question on Zoom from Napa, who was saying, just wondering if bidders could submit more than one order. For example, bidder E. Could they submit 2 orders of 200,000 with 2 different prices instead of 400,000 at one price?
Yes. It's nice to have questions that come with an easy answer. Okay. I like the complex questions. Feel free to ask difficult questions. But that was an easy one. Now let's look at the secondary market. This is how allowances change hands once they are in the market, how they are traded. The counterparties are often firms that have a business relationship with each other. And secondary market deals with, this is about OTC trading now, are often facilitated by an intermediary. There are 2 ways to contract an OTC deal. One is via a master agreement between 2 parties, and the other one is via a single contract. A single contract makes sense if only a very small number of deals are made, because then you don't have the effort of creating a template contract in your master agreement where all the relevant elements are agreed upon. That's a bit more of a complex contract where products, costs, dates. However, there are standardized master agreements provided, for example, by the International Emissions Trading Association or others. And then you just need a confirmation to seal an individual deal. If many trades are being made, then a master agreement makes sense, because then the individual trade is only a very low effort contractual thing. Single agreements then need to include all the necessary conditions, that what makes them longer contracts. But these are still shorter than a master agreement, but it, as I said, it makes only sense if it's a small number of deals. Trading via intermediaries. Bilateral deals can also be made between intermediaries or carried out via intermediaries, not between intermediaries. And there the counterparty usually is a professional trader. And this is usually not, who is not trading for compliance purpose, but this is, the intermediary is then providing this service, and providing this service as a business. Companies in the market, so operators of installations, usually use only one or very few intermediaries. And intermediaries can be banks, can also be large energy suppliers who offer this service as an additional service of their trading desks, or it can be consultancies. For example, FutureCamp, where I come from, is a consultancy and primarily supporting companies in fulfilling their obligations. But as an ancillary service, FutureCamp is also working as an intermediary. For example, the waste incineration plants in Germany, they have then a framework contract via their association, and then individual waste incineration plants, they can, through this framework contract that their association has made, in this case with FutureCamp, buy the allowances they need for their compliance. This is usually community-owned enterprises, so that's a function every city needs to provide. So they are not interested in making this more complicated than necessary and trading at exchanges, etc., etc. It's just a compliance obligation they have to fulfill, and so for smaller installations, it makes sense to have such an offering. They can also do it via a large bank that offers this service. So another option to trade OTC is via a broker. What a broker does is a bit similar like in an auction, collect bids and offers, and then look for matches. So when a broker then finds a match, that means that bid and offer have the same terms of trade. They exchange the contract details between the counterparties, and after that it's not different. It's just a normal bilateral deal, but that is facilitated by the broker. So he finds your counterpart that you need for the deal, and for that they cash a brokerage fee. This is not so transparent, far less transparent than an auction at an exchange, for example. But it is a quite flexible instrument and helpful when markets come into existence. And then trading can also be done via exchanges. Their company needs to be a member of the exchange if they want to trade. This is quite an effort because the master agreement with an exchange is a complex agreement, and it comes with initial fees and with annual fees. That means that it's a high initial effort that needs to be made, but then the variable fees, they are much lower than those for other venues of trading. An intermediary or a broker will have higher fees. And the exact conditions, of course, depend on the exchange that facilitates the trading. So when does this make sense? It makes sense when you trade high volumes throughout the year. How is this done? A so-called non-clearing member places an order at the exchange, and then the exchange matches order with bids, and then the exchange or an entity run by the exchange serves as a centralized counterparty. And then on the other side of the deal, you have a settlement partner. So the settlement partner gets paid, and you have the corresponding transaction in the registry. Looks a bit difficult, but most of this or all of this can be large banks. So in practice, and banks can also fulfill several of the roles that we see here. Pros and cons of exchange trading. You have very high security there, and it's also an anonymous form of trading. That's not the case with necessarily the case with bilateral trades. We have high price transparency, and the products are standardized, and low variable costs. And also the procurement is secure and fast. The entry barriers instead are high. That's the main con, and high entry costs. So administrative and cost-wise, high entry costs, and you also have minimum lot sizes. So it becomes quite clear, I think, that when you think of the market with its large volumes, and then think of specific installations that produce paper or bricks. These are often small firms. Paper, not super small, but bricks, for example, these are not the biggest firms. Or cement is also, we have so many cement plants that is family-run businesses often. It makes no sense for them to go all the way to such a complex form of trading. They need to fulfill their compliance obligations. And therefore we have these different ways of facilitating trading, and all have their justification of being in the market or their function. So this is again this ESMA report, but now for secondary markets trading. If you look at the volumes, then you see we have exchange traded 12.6 billion, so far smaller than the numbers we saw before. That was 599, if I remember it right. And on exchanges, you see the products that are traded there are primarily futures, and then also options. So this is the, I said it's standardized products that you trade on exchange. So this has the function of securing prices also. What we also see is that the structure of actors in the lower part here, and the share of the volumes that are traded. Compliance entities and other non-financials is 20% of the volumes traded. So this is should be almost only large utilities here. And then we have investment firms there, and credit institutions, 64%, and also 15% investment funds. This brings us to a question that we have had for quite a while in the market when the prices were constantly increasing. What is the role of investment funds and the role of speculation in the market? Is that driving up the prices? The ESMA report finds that the market is not dysfunctional because we have speculation in there. The smaller a market is, now looking towards market design, the less effort you need to manipulate a market or have a very high impact on a market if you are active there as a speculative actor. That's less of a risk in a large market. So I think that's, looking at Thailand, maybe something that should be looked at closer in market design. Yeah? What will be the role of potentially speculative actors? So 6 minutes until the break. We'll go on to market players now. Does somebody have still questions to the part we saw right now? Yeah.
Maybe difficult for me. มีสามคำถามค่ะพยายามจะคิดจากประสบการณ์ว่ามันคือตลาดหลักทรัพย์ประเทศไทยprimary market เนี่ยมันคือ IPO ป่ะคะ secondary market มันคือตลาดที่เราเทรดกันอย่างนี้เข้าใจถูกต้องไหมคะค่ะโอเคค่ะคำถามแรกมี3คำถามค่ะคำถามแรกพยายามที่จะทำความเข้าใจข้อมูลใหม่กับประสบการณ์ตัวเองมีถ้ามองนี้มันคือเหมือนเป็น financial service เนาะเป็นตลาดหลักทรัพย์ stock market primary market เนี่ยมันเหมือนกับIPO คือเวลาที่ allowance เข้ามาในตลาดอันนี้ถูกต้องไหมคะ primary market เพราะฉะนั้นมันก็จะต้องแบบมีกระบวนการของมันคนที่จะเข้ามาได้เนี่ยมันอาจจะเป็นองค์กรใหญ่ๆที่ต้องการจะขายallowance ตัวนี้ก็มันอาจจะเหมือน IPO ของตลาดหลักทรัพย์หรือเปล่าคะ you understand what
Yes, I got the first question.
yeah first question the second one ดังนั้นถ้าตลาดของprimary market เนี่ยมันน่าจะอะไรมันน่าจะมีราคาขึ้นอยู่คุณภาพที่เข้ามาเหมือนกับIPO หรือเปล่า pricing ในเรื่องของ pricing นะคะคำถามที่3 secondary market เนี่ยถ้าเราเปรียบเทียบเหมือนตลาดหลักทรัพย์เนี่ยมันก็จะมีความเสี่ยงเพราะมันมีfinancial product นะคะซึ่งมันจะมี future มี options ซึ่งคุณสมบัติของตัว allowance ที่เข้ามาเนี่ยมันก็จะต้องเลือกใช่ไหมราคามันเลยต่างกันไม่ทราบคนที่แปลเข้าใจที่พูดไหมคะเข้าใจใช่ไหมคะ That's it เสร็จแล้วค่ะค่ะ
Okay, and you had a third question?
primary เสร็จแล้วคำถามที่2จะบอกว่าความน่าเชื่อถือของ primary market คนที่ issue มันนะคะ issue มันที่เป็น IPO เนี่ยมีผลต่อราคาใช่หรือไม่ค่ะคำถามที่2นะคะ
I can try first if you want but you can try ผมคิดว่ามันเทียบไม่ได้จริงๆตลาดอาจจะตอบง่ายกว่า
งั้นขออนุญาตมองในมุมของตลาดหลักทรัพย์นะครับคือถ้าเกิดเทียบกันแล้วเนี่ยคือในตลาดหลักทรัพย์มันมีสินค้าหุ้นหลายตัวเพราะว่ามันมี issuer หลายคนหลายบริษัทเพียงแต่ว่ากรณีนี้มันมีพูดง่ายๆคือมี1 issuer ก็คือกระทรวงทรัพย์หรือกรมนี่แหละที่ issue ตัว allowance ออกมาให้กับoperator ในการใช้
เพราะฉะนั้นความเชื่อถือได้มันมั่นใจแน่ๆ
มั่นใจได้คือมันคืออันเดียวมันคือสินค้าตัวเดียวกันใช้ได้หมดนะครับอันนั้นมุมมองของเราแล้วตอบกลับมาในแง่ของตัว primary ครับ primary ถ้าเกิดเป็นหุ้นเนี่ยมันคือ IPO เข้าใจได้แต่อันนี้มันคือการ auction จากกระทรวงไปให้กับผู้ที่ต้องใช้ในตลาดอันนั้นคืออันแรกเสร็จแล้วถ้าเขาอยากจะมาขายต่อเนี่ยก็ต้องเอามา list ตัวเนี้ยที่ตลาดทรัพย์เพื่อจะขายต่อใช่ครับมันก็จะหมุนอยู่ในตลาดต่อไปเรื่อยๆคือ secondary ใช่ครับตาม demand supply ใช่ครับ
แต่มันคือหุ้นตัวเดียวนะ
หุ้นตัวเดียวเลยมันไม่มีหลายตัว
มันไม่ได้เปรียบเทียบกับใครอื่น
หุ้นอื่นเลย
คุณสมัยมันก็จะไม่ต้องแบบว่าเหมือนปัจจุบันที่ต้องไปดูว่าไม่มีเครดิตเรตติ้ง
ไม่มีครับมันไม่มีข่าวด้วยครับมันไม่มีข่าวที่มา affect ด้วยไม่มีผลประกอบการไม่เหมือนหุ้นครับเพียงแต่ว่าที่ตลาดทรัพย์เรากำลังมีปัญหากันอยู่เนี่ยเนื่องจากว่าสินค้าตัวนี้มันต่างจากหุ้นตัวอื่นเนี่ยที่เรากำลังคิดกันอยู่คือแล้วทำยังไงที่มันต้องมีกระบวนการในการทำ market surveillance ด้วยหรือเปล่าด้วยtest ด้วย criteria อะไรบ้างเนี่ยเพราะว่าตอนนี้เรากำลังดูว่าเพราะว่าในไทยปัญหาที่เราเจอตอนนี้เนี่ยเล่าเลยแล้วกันครับในไทยตอนนี้คือตัว allowance กับค่าเครดิตเนี่ยมันไม่ถูกตีความว่าเป็น securities ดังนั้นมันไม่ตกอยู่ภายใต้พรบหลักทรัพย์ซึ่งสำนักงานกลต.เขาบอกชัดแล้วว่าเขาไม่มีอำนาจในการ regulate ตัวนี้ทีนี้ถ้าตลาดทรัพย์จะทำการเทรดดิ้งตลาดทรัพย์ต้องไปหากลไกในการดูแลมันเองว่าทำยังไงไม่ให้เกิด market abuse เกิดขึ้นซึ่งตอนนี้เท่าที่คุยกับกรมเนี่ยในร่างพรบมันไม่มีมาตราไหนเลยที่ไปพูดเรื่องของการกำกับดูแลคำว่าเรื่อง allowance trading เลย อันนี้มันเลยเป็นปัญหาอยู่ว่าแล้วใครล่ะจะมากำกับกรณีที่มีปัญหาเกิดขึ้นในกระบวนการการซื้อขายครับ
คำว่า trading คือจะต้องมีมูลค่า
มีใช่ครับ
value มีผู้ซื้อกับผู้ขาย
ใช่ครับ
แต่ตรงนี้เรายังไม่มีแมคานิกที่ทำให้มัน
กำลังเลือกอยู่ครับกำลังดีไซน์อยู่ว่าจะใช้กลไกใดแต่ว่าอย่างที่มีวิทยากรพูดครับมันจะมีสปอตกับฟิวเจอร์ซึ่งตอนนี้เราดูอยู่ทั้งสองแบบแต่ว่าการจะมีฟิวเจอร์ได้ต้องมีสปอตก่อนเพราะมันไม่งั้นมันไม่มีราคาอ้างอิงในการทำฟิวเจอร์โปรดักต์
แต่ถ้ามีสปอตฟิวเจอร์มันก็สามารถจะเป็นผลิตได้สิอาจารย์
เราผมมองว่าผมพยายามดีเฟนต์หลายรอบแล้วว่ามันมีสเปกุเลทีฟได้แต่ไม่ใช่manipulation คนละความหมายกันนะครับspeculate นี่คือการเก็งอย่างถูกต้องแต่ว่า manipulate อันนี้ที่เรากลัวมันเรากลัวการหัวการดั้มกันอะไรเงี้ยนั้นมากกว่าที่กลัวครับ
แต่มันก็คือความเห็นผมคือมันเทียบตรงๆไม่ได้มันเป็นคนละแบบกันครับ
พยายามจะเทียบว่ามันต่างกันตรงไหน
If you want
thanks very good discussion I would add, no very very good thanks you could
Stock
answer that
Exchange of Thailand
yeah I noticed or I guessed I would add one aspect for carbon markets this thing that we have is called allowance for a reason. So it is like a permit to allow and you have to hand it in. That is different to a credit that can be generated in the offset market. Yeah? When you have a credit that is issued for an emission saving, for example, with a biochar project or whatever, all the different types of projects, then other questions come in. With credits, you have the question of environmental integrity, of the accounting, is a ton, etc. So there the MRV that we saw yesterday is linked to the process of issuing a credit. Do you really get what you buy? That is a big concern in the voluntary market of credits, where companies buy credits voluntarily to offset their emissions, usually used to for communication, corporate sustainability, corporate social responsibility. In the ETS, we don't have that because the whole monitoring process is a different one. That's MRV, what we yesterday saw, what is done with the authorities, what determines how much emissions you have to, how much allowances you have to surrender. And there we see risks for inaccuracy or fraudulent behavior, etc. But as the colleague from the stock exchange said, the allowance, there I don't see such risks, yeah.